The city had a way of swallowing people whole, devouring their dreams in the noise of honking cars and blinking lights. For Isla, that sound had become the rhythm of survival. Every morning, she opened her small bakery before sunrise, the scent of warm bread her only companion. The world had forgotten her name, and she had grown comfortable with that. Her phone buzzed one Thursday evening, as she was closing up. The message came from an unfamiliar number, but the name at the bottom made her heart skip. Ryan. Her elder brother. They hadn't spoken in nearly 4 years. Not since their parents' funeral. Back then, he had walked out after an argument about inheritance. Isla had refused to sell their parents' house. Ryan wanted to liquidate everything and invest in a chain of restaurants. He called her naive, emotional, and useless. She called him heartless. The distance that day became a canyon neither tried to cross again. And now, suddenly, he was inviting her to his bachelor party. "Hey Isla, having my bachelor party next week at the Imperial Grand. You should come. Family only. 8 p.m. The message was short, almost cold. But Isla read it again and again. The Imperial Grand wasn't just any hotel. It was the most expensive one in the city, the kind that only appeared in magazines. Chandeliers that cost more than her entire bakery. Suites larger than her childhood home. She sat down on the bakery stool, the letter trembling slightly in her hand. She didn't know what stung more. The sudden invitation, or the fact that even now, her brother spoke to her like a stranger. Her assistant, Mina, noticed her silence. "Everything okay?" Isla forced a smile. Just an old memory knocking again. The truth was, Isla still loved Ryan. Despite the cruelty, the distance, and the things he had said, he was her only family left. When their parents died, she had spent sleepless nights worrying about him. She used to make his favorite dessert every year on his birthday, even though he never came by. That night, she sat by the window of her small apartment, staring at the blinking skyline. The Imperial Grand stood tall among the other buildings, its glass reflecting the city's arrogance. She thought of the boy Ryan used to be. The one who held her hand on her first day of school, who shared his snacks, who once promised her, "No matter what happens, I'll always look after you." People changed. Life changed them. Success hardened them, and sometimes love wasn't enough to bring them back. But Isla decided she would go. Not to show off, not to argue, but simply to be there. Maybe it was foolish. But a small part of her still hoped that her brother might remember who she was beneath the walls of pride and wealth he had built around himself. She opened her wardrobe, scanning through her modest clothes. She had nothing fancy, just a few plain dresses and her mother's old pearl earrings. They weren't grand, but they meant something. She smiled faintly as she touched them. "This will do," she whispered. The night before the party, the city felt colder. Isla locked her bakery and stood outside for a moment, watching people pass by. Laughing, rushing, living. She had never cared for wealth. But she had built something on her own, something honest. Her bakery wasn't much, but it was hers. Still, the thought of facing Ryan made her heart ache. What would he say? Would he even introduce her as his sister? She closed her eyes, breathing in deeply. "Whatever happens," she murmured, "I'll walk in with my head held high." When she arrived at the Imperial Grand the next evening, her small car looked out of place among the limousines and sports cars lined up at the entrance. The doormen in gold, trimmed uniforms opened the glass doors, their polite smiles masking the judgment in their eyes. Isla walked inside, the sound of her modest heels tapping against the marble. The chandeliers above glittered like captured stars, and the scent of expensive perfume filled the air. She saw Ryan from across the room, tall, handsome, surrounded by laughter and champagne. His fiancée, Alina, stood beside him in a shimmering silver dress. Everything about them screamed perfection. For a brief second their eyes met. Ryan's smile faltered, replaced by something unreadable. Discomfort, perhaps even embarrassment. He walked toward her, his friend's curious eyes following. "Isla," he said, forcing a smile. "You came." "Of course," she replied softly. "You invited me." There was a pause. The noise around them seemed to fade. "You look simple," he said finally, his tone half kind, half condescending. But it's good you made the effort. She nodded, pretending not to notice the smirk that crossed his fiancée's face. And as the music swelled and laughter filled the hall once more, Isla realized. Tonight wasn't just a reunion. It was a test. A test of how much she could endure before the past demanded to be rewritten. The ballroom glowed like a jewel. Gold, laughter, and arrogance reflected in every crystal glass. Waiters moved gracefully between guests, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too pretty to eat. Laughter echoed off marble walls as music played softly in the background. Isla stood near the corner, her modest dress blending into the shadows. She had hoped her presence would go unnoticed, that she could quietly watch her brother celebrate his happiness. But fate never let things stay quiet for long. Ryan, glowing in his designer tuxedo, moved from group to group like the center of gravity itself. His fiancée Alina floated beside him, all diamonds and practiced charm. They looked like the kind of couple made for photographs and headlines. Isla sipped her juice slowly, trying not to feel small among the expensive gowns and glittering jewelry. She had never belonged to this world of wealth. The bakery smell still clung to her hands. The scent of dough and sugar of honest work. It was a scent that didn't fit here. Suddenly, Ryan's voice broke through the music. "Everyone," he called out, raising his glass. "I want you to meet my little sister." Heads turned. The crowd shifted. Isla's heart stumbled in her chest. "Isla," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "finally decided to show up after all these years." A ripple of polite laughter followed. Isla smiled weakly. "I'm glad to be here," she said, her voice calm. "Congratulations, Ryan. I'm happy for you." Ryan chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. "You should be. Not everyone gets to have a party like this, right?" The people around them laughed. It wasn't cruel yet. Not quite. But the edge was there, sharp and waiting. A tall man beside Ryan asked, "So, Isla, what do you do? I've never seen you at these events." Isla hesitated. "I run a small bakery downtown." The man blinked, clearly unimpressed. Ryan's fiancée giggled softly, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "A bakery," she said sweetly. "That's cute." Ryan grinned. "Yeah, she makes cupcakes and stuff. Nothing fancy, but hey, it's honest work, right, sis?" The laughter this time wasn't polite. It was real. It burned. Isla's cheeks flushed, but she forced herself to smile. "Yes!" she said softly. "It's honest work." Ryan leaned closer, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You know, Isla, I'm actually surprised you came tonight. This hotel probably costs more per night than your entire bakery makes in a month." The laughter that followed was cruel, sharp, echoing across the ballroom. Isla stood frozen, her smile trembling, her heart breaking quietly behind her calm eyes. The words hit harder than she expected. She had been insulted before. By strangers, by customers, by life. But this was different. This was her brother. The boy who once shared his snacks with her after school. The man she had defended when everyone called him selfish. Her throat tightened, but she didn't speak. The crowd was watching, waiting for her to shrink. Instead, she looked directly into Ryan's eyes and said softly, "You're right, Ryan. I can't afford this hotel." He smirked, satisfied. "Well, at least you're honest." Isla smiled faintly. "Yes, I am." And then she turned away. Her dignity wrapped around her like armor. She walked to the corner of the ballroom and stood by the window, staring out at the glittering city below. Her heart ached, but her eyes didn't water. She had learned long ago that tears never changed cruel people. Silence did. Behind her, the laughter resumed, the music rose, and Ryan's voice carried through the hall again. But Isla heard nothing. Her mind was miles away, at the bakery, where her hands worked in peace, where no one judged her for what she wore or what she earned. She didn't belong here, not because she was less, but because her soul didn't fit inside a room that measured worth in gold. Still, as she watched the city lights blur through the glass, a thought whispered at the back of her mind. "You can't afford this hotel." The words replayed, slow and cold, but fate, as it always does, had been listening too, and it was smiling, because by the end of the night, everyone in that ballroom would know just how wrong Ryan had been. The laughter from the ballroom still echoed faintly as Isla stood by the tall glass windows, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold. Each sparkle reminded her of the world her brother had chosen. A world of shallow smiles and sharp tongues. For a long while, she didn't move. She simply breathed, letting the humiliation settle like dust on her skin. Her brother's words replayed in her mind again and again, cutting deeper each time. "You can't afford this hotel." She almost laughed at the irony of it. Because if he knew the truth, he would have swallowed his pride right there on that marble floor. A waiter approached her carefully, holding a silver tray. "Miss Isla," he said softly, "the general manager would like a word with you. He's waiting in the VIP lounge." Isla blinked. "Are you sure? With me?" The waiter nodded respectfully. "Yes, ma'am. He asked for you by name." A murmurs rippled nearby. Some guests turned to look, whispering behind their glasses of champagne. Isla could feel Rayan's gaze from across the hall, curious and faintly irritated. As she followed the waiter, her heels clicked softly on the marble, echoing like a quiet drumbeat of justice drawing near. The VIP lounge was warm and dimly lit, filled with quiet music and soft carpets. The general manager, a distinguished man in a navy suit, stood waiting for her. The moment she stepped in, he smiled warmly and bowed slightly. "Good evening, Miss Isla. I hope everything is satisfactory tonight." Isla hesitated, still unsure. "Everything's fine, thank you. But I think there's a mistake." He shook his head quickly. "No mistake, Mom. We just wanted to confirm. Would you like us to prepare your usual suite for the night? It's available if you wish to stay after the event." A few nearby staff members, overhearing, exchanged startled looks. The lounge wasn't soundproof, and a few guests, including Rayan's fiancée, Alina, had wandered close enough to hear. Isla's brow furrowed. "That won't be necessary," she said politely. "I'm only here for the party." The general manager nodded respectfully. "As you wish, ma'am. Please don't hesitate if you need anything. I've already instructed the staff to ensure your brother's guests are comfortable." Her brother's guests. The words hit like a soft thunderclap in the silence. Rayan had entered the room midway through the conversation. He froze, confusion washing over his face. "Wait. What's going on?" The general manager turned, startled. "Ah, Mr. Rayan. I didn't realize you were here. I was just checking with Men's Isla regarding tonight's arrangements." Rayan frowned. Arrangements? Why would she have anything to do with that? The man's confusion deepened. "Because she's the owner, sir." The room went silent. Even the music seemed to pause. Rayan blinked, his smirk fading like spilled ink. "I'm sorry? The what?" The manager smiled, misunderstanding his tone. "Ms. Isla is the majority shareholder of the Imperial Grand Group. We operate all 8 hotels under her ownership. I assumed you knew." Isla closed her eyes briefly. She hadn't wanted this. Not tonight, not like this. But the truth had a way of unveiling itself when arrogance tried to bury it. Rayan stared at her, disbelief and shame colliding in his eyes. "You're joking." She met his gaze calmly. "No, Rayan, I'm not." For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, thick with realization. Around them, whispers spread like wildfire.